Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're glad you took a little bit of time this evening to spend with us. I am Alyssa DeFilippo with Parents Helping Parents. I run a program called Connections California, which is an online resource and information hub addressing a statewide audience for issues about transition to adulthood and adult services. So this evening, if you'd like to find out how a legacy home program can help secure housing for your loved one with IDD, you are at the right place. Our presenters this evening are Kris McCann and Madison Adams, and they are from the Bay Area Housing Corp. Kris serves as executive director of the Bay Area Housing Corporation, and that has been dedicated to creating homes for individuals with developmental disabilities since 2000. She's recognized as a statewide leader in the housing field. She has expertise in organizational development, nonprofit management, and real estate. And as the founding executive director of both BAHC, the Bay Area Housing Corporation, and Housing Choices Coalition, and the parent of an adult with developmental disability, she is deeply committed to making a difference in this community. And Madison is the program manager for the Legacy Homes program and Making Homes Work at Bay Area Housing Corporation. She plays a key role in supporting property management operations, overseeing inbound program inquiries, and managing marketing initiatives. Madison is deeply passionate about serving individuals with IDD. And then toward the end of our presentation, Lev Mass, co-founder and CEO of Cradle 2, will be popping on to join us. He is a serial entrepreneur and investor with 20 years of experience in building tech companies. So, without further ado, I want to thank you all for being here. Thank our presenters for being here. Thanking Gabriel, our Spanish interpreter. I know I didn't speak slowly, but I'm going to ask our presenters to. I'm going to stop my share and we'll start the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kris McCann, and I am the executive director of Bay Area Housing Corp. And I am going to try to speak slowly, and I'll try to remind myself of that. I do have a daughter that has cerebral palsy, and her name is Darcy McCann, and she is 46 years of age. And like most of you, if you are on this call and you're a parent, or you're a sibling, or you're a grandparent, or you're a friend of a person with a developmental disability, intellectual developmental disability, one of the things that might keep you up at night is what's going to happen to my child, my brother, my sister, my aunt, my uncle, or whoever it happens to be when I'm not here any longer. And that is something that is one of my concerns. And we have been very successful at creating housing in the Bay Area, thanks to the closure of Agnew's Developmental Center, is how we first began. And we currently have 53 homes that we own and we do the property management for. So we started thinking, with all of this expertise that we have, how do we translate that expertise and be able to help more people? So tonight, I'd love to tell you a little bit about who Bay Area Housing Corp is and who we are, what we do, and most importantly, why we do it, and transition that into a program called Legacy. And Legacy is a new program of ours. It's in the process of being formulated. We don't have all of the answers yet. We are working to answer more and more of the questions that families may have. And we are there when something happens to the family member, or there's a possibility you could even create a legacy home before that occurs. But before I get too much more into all the details, I'm going to tell you a little bit about BAHC, and Maddie's going to tell you a little bit more about Legacy. and then we'll come back to some further questions. And then Lev Mass, who is going to tell you a little bit about some ideas for perhaps funding some of the costs that may go into creating a legacy home. So get ready, here we go. So as Alicia said, we are a 501c3. We are up in the Bay Area, specifically in San Jose, California. And we work exclusively with people that have intellectual and developmental disabilities in the Bay Area. We have been awarded consistently some high rankings when it comes to what we do and how we do it. Let me put my glasses on so I'm making sure that I'm seeing the screen correctly. We've served over these years of creating these homes. We have 53 homes scattered in the greater Bay Area. We've helped 500 individuals with their housing. Our assets right now are at least 69 million. We have an operation budget close to 2.5 million, and we have 7 full-time employees. And I'm really proud of the fact that we have a very lean and I wouldn't call us mean, but we are a very lean organization because we want to make sure that our money that we raise gets out into the community. We do hire consultants to help us, and we have a wonderful team that's been with us for years. This is our group. We do property management and own it. So I see Lisa has a question. Alicia, do you want, if somebody has a question and a hand up, do we answer it right now?
No, we'll be going through the entire presentation and then we'll take Q&A.
Okay, so Lisa, we will come back to that question. Don't feel like I'm ignoring you, okay? Super. Next one, Maddie. So some of the core competencies of Bay Area housing is our home ownership, our good property management, our operational excellence, and our service support referral. We really believe in the importance of separating the housing from the services. So all we do is the housing. And in this legacy program, we're going to tell you about, we will partner with another individual or another group that would be the service providing portion of it. But we would be doing the housing and the property management. Our mission is to be a catalyst for improving the lives of people with IDD by creating and maintaining quality housing opportunities that meets the needs of individuals and the community. Our values are passion, collaboration, compassion, compassion, joy, excellent, and results. We love getting good results. Our vision is that all people with IDD in our region have access to affordable, community-based housing that meets their individual preferences and support needs. Super. So when we talk about our values and what we do, excellence is certainly a part of it. We provide the most feasible financial model throughout the life of the family member with IDD. We will try to provide that model. We will design a home that will integrate safety and security for residents, staff, and the community. Collaboration. We focus on person-centered planning, and I know you're hearing lots about person-centered planning. to allow the individual's needs to drive the process. One of the things that I'm sure you out there in the audience can probably relate to is that there's just not enough housing, and there's not enough dollars out there for housing, and where do I find housing? And I think most of you know, or some of you might know, that at least 80% of the people with IDD in the state of California live with their parents, or live with a sibling, or live with a loved one. The question becomes, what happens when that individual support system is no longer there? How to be thinking about it proactively now, rather than waiting for something to happen in the future. So we believe in collaboration. We offer flexibility with options when assessing the qualifying criteria and eligibility requirements. And most importantly, we honor the family's wishes for the family members with IDD. And one of the things that we also believe strongly is for people to live and to integrate into the community, if possible. And there may be some cases that that is not possible, but I'll tell you, we, out of our 53 homes, we have some pretty complex individuals that are living in our homes, that are successfully living in our homes. And I think that's important to remember. We will provide the power of community engagement in addition to support services to create connections for residents. Compassion. Our goal is to provide peace of mind for the family and the donor of the home, always keeping in mind their best interests in asset protection. BAHC will facilitate the appointment of a trust protector, or work with you, somebody that can look over your asset, to work with us to make sure there is a partnership in being able to do that. Passion. We believe it is important to create quality, permanent housing and pay for it once. This is the model that helped start our model 20 years ago, is pay for it once, and get literally the separation of who owns the home from who the service provider is. And why that's important, I think, is that if you have a provider of services and somehow things change, and that provider is no longer working well with the client or with the family, it's the housing doesn't have to change. The housing remains stable, and you can bring in other services to provide that kind of support. So I believe totally in that model. And that's the one that we have put forward. Of course, there's lots of models, and I'm never going to say one is better than the other, but that's our model. Joy. We strive to provide adult residents with IDD hope for leading a meaningful and purposeful life. We will create an indoor-outdoor living environment for our residents to enjoy to the fullest, and most importantly, results. This home will provide an ongoing opportunity for continuous learning and development with bespoke services provided by caring staff from the community. So that's a little bit about our values and what we see as important as we go forward in this legacy program. So legacy homes, why did we do it, and what's it all about? So it's estimated that there's 250,000 adults in the greater Bay Area. So think about how many there are in the state of California. And they typically earn less than 30% of the average median income for at least the Bay Area. And I would say that probably goes throughout the state of California as well. Approximately 80% live in their families' homes. They are priced out of even the most affordable housing. BAHC addresses this critical lack of housing for people with IDD. Many families are searching for a way to plan for their future of a child with developmental disabilities, which can be costly to the state and to families. Parents of children with developmental disabilities face difficult choices regarding ensuring housing for their children. And I don't have to tell you out there in the audience how difficult housing is. But most importantly, to have a plan of what happens when you are gone. The challenging housing market affects choices available to aging parents with a child who lives at home. Younger parents who want to ensure they have living environments now, and other family members who need to ensure the living environment for their family members. So this is sort of what drove us to take what we've learned in creating the houses that we own. And these were gathered to us by applying basically for, we received proposals, and we received money from DDS to the regional centers, and for specific proposals to develop a type of home. So that's where our money has come from to purchase these homes. And then we have leased these homes to a service provider that the regional center has selected, and then individuals live in those homes. So we only handle the housing portion of it, and it's worked really well. So when we were thinking about how can we take what we've learned and invite parents that may have a home and think, okay, what's going to happen to that home when I'm gone? And this program is not for everybody by any means. This would be for somebody that may have a home or has resources to create a home that would be able to participate in this. But the thing that I think is cool about it is that that child, your child, would go into that home, and then we hope to invite other people from the community of people with IDD to also live in that home. So we want to create more and more housing out there for the people that may have a home, inviting other people and their loved one to have roommates that could also live in that home. So it's sort of like a win-win situation of having the family have a loved one, the loved one will live in that home and have other roommates that would help pay rent, that would also create revenue to keep that home going. So let me tell you a little bit more about it. We have been doing this concept of legacy, and it just hasn't been Bay Area housing. There are many housing groups that we are part of an organization called the Latterman Housing Alliance. And each of you in different parts of this state may have a housing organization that would be part of this group. So we have worked with this group over the years to take this concept and take it through the timeline of where we are today. And it began all the way back in 2003. So I can tell you, this has not been a fast process, but it's been a thorough process. And there's lots of rules, regulations, real estate, anything that has been a part of this decision making. But I think the thing to think about, if you think this might be an option for you and you want to know more about it, you can certainly get our information and we can certainly have a conversation. But if I could say anything about the history of this, is that think about what you want for your child as you age or as your loved one gets older. Make sure that you have some type of a plan and you've worked with an attorney or a trustee or a loved one that knows your wishes, and that you are thinking about this, because the benefits that you receive, your child receives from the state could be jeopardized. For example, if you give your house directly to your loved one, that could really goof up their services. And perhaps they wouldn't get the services as much as they may need. So there's some legal ways to go through this housing maze. It's not simple and it's not easy, but it's doable. One of the individuals that is on our board of directors now is Kathy Hebert. And Kathy contacted us a few years ago, and she was the chairperson of the Regional Center of the East Bay. And she also was the chairperson of the ARCA, the Association of Regional Centers throughout the entire state. So she was in charge of all of the regional centers working together basically with DDS. So I was very excited when she contacted us and said, Kris, I've heard about your legacy program. Please tell us more. And she has a son named Greg, and she and her husband, Kris, have a home in the Fremont area. And that's in the Alameda County area. And it's a 5-bedroom home. And she was thinking about what will happen when my son dies, and thinking about it. And she had gone down lots of different avenues. She started working with some other parents, and they were going to form a partnership and buy a home together and do that. And then they decided not to do that. Then they were going to go in with another group. And so there were a lot of different ways they were maneuvering it. But they came to the conclusion that they have the perfect home. They have a 5-bedroom home, and they have 2 other daughters, and they discussed it with their 2 daughters and said, we would like to have a legacy home. We would like to donate our home basically to BAHC, and their son, literally Greg, will live in that home. We are working with a service provider that will be providing the support for her son in that home. And we will be signing a contract with us, and they will be signing also a contract with the service provider. And the way we're going to work it is that on a yearly basis, we will go back and say, is that still a good idea? Because we certainly don't want to take somebody's home and make sure that everything is still good for folks. But we're getting it all set up that just in case, all the paperwork would be done, because if something were to happen to Kris and Kathy right now, that BAHC would be prepared to take over that home. And the way that that would happen is that literally we've done an evaluation of their home, of what would be needed to for rent to keep that home going and for us to do the property management of it. So Greg would be getting literally, sorry, Maddie, Greg would be getting supported living. And then that provider would be looking for other individuals that would be compatible with Greg to be able to live in that home. And so it's a win-win. There's a home and an asset, and Greg is getting it, and literally other roommates would have the advantage of living in a home that would be, for her, she does not want it to be a licensed home. This would be more for supported living. But we certainly can talk with families about what the best option is from that. And we have in the slide deck that you're going to get, Kathy has her words of why she has decided to do it, but I'm just talking on behalf of her right now. And we're really lucky because Kathy is now no longer the president of either ARCA or the Regional Center of the East Bay, BAHC. So she has joined our board of directors, and we're thrilled to have her join our team. So what is BAHC's legacy program? Maddie, do you want to do that?
Yeah, I can go ahead and take over. Thank you, Kris.
Okay.
And thank you everyone for joining us today. So just a little bit, I know Kris kind of touched on it, but I do want to just reiterate a couple of key points about this program and what exactly it is. So the main aspect of it is that you have a loved one, whether that be a child, niece, nephew, brother, sister, who has an intellectual or developmental disability, and you want to address that long-term housing need. Typically, when we originally thought of this program, we were thinking, what's the greatest asset you can have here in California, especially in the Bay Area, and that's a home. As many of us know, the housing costs and housing market has gotten a little bit out of control. So we know that, that's a challenge for folks, and having a home is really a huge asset. So how can we make the most out of that asset for folks? So opening that home up to other individuals who maybe wouldn't have had that as an option, and allowing that that primary resident is what we typically would refer to them as, allowing that person to live there and kind of be the driver of what the structure of that home would look like. Again, when we originally thought of this, it was in the case of a family already having a home. But as we've kind of gotten further and further down the line, we've found that there are families who maybe want to purchase a home for this cause, or in a philanthropic sort of scenario, maybe just donate the home and not have that loved one attached to it. So we have kind of gone down that rabbit hole of other options, and I have a slide on that as well that we can touch on. But the main benefits, of course, would be peace of mind for the family, planning ahead and knowing that there is a plan in place as far as what would happen to your loved one. Stability for that family member and the opportunity for them to age in place. With our current homes, our 53 homes, that is the model. Those individuals do live there in perpetuity. And, we see that as a huge benefit for folks. We don't want folks to have to think about moving or relocating. Of course, it's a meaningful way to share resources within the community. We help select a service provider as well as a trustee to make sure that everyone's feeling comfortable and on the same page, and that the family's wishes are being executed, and that the loved one can have the support that they need. Compatible roommates to share expenses. We have gotten the question of, what if I don't think that my loved one can live with roommates, or what if they don't want roommates? That is an option. However, of course, financially, we just need to make sure everything can pencil. So that is something we would have to discuss a little bit further. But it's not necessarily a requirement to have roommates. And then, of course, there's advantages of nonprofit ownership, such as a break on the property taxes, And of course, our expertise in ownership, property management, repairs, and maintenance. As Kris said, we've been doing this for over 20 years. So we've figured out what's worked, what doesn't work, and what we believe to be a good model.
Maddie, could I just add one other thing? Going back to Kathy Hubert's of why for her, she also feels that once something happens to them and the home is transferred to us and their son is living there, if something happens to him, they wanted to make sure that there are more opportunities for other people in the community as well. So it's a legacy that they are passing on to other people to be able to have a place to live. So it's almost like a philanthropist also that is giving their home that their child can use. But as time goes on, our commitment is to keep that home going for other people with IDD.
And kind of the main options or the main scenarios that we see playing out, and this list has continued to grow as we've gone further and further down this, so it's definitely not just limited to these three, but the transfer of a family home. So for example, in Kathy Hubert's case, it's a home that they own, that was their family home, and they're now retired and the home is paid off. So that was the best option for them. The purchase of a home for an adult child to live in perpetuity. So again, I've had parents reach out who say, well, I don't want to have to wait until I pass away to make this transition. My son or daughter wants to live independently. Can we get this going now? So that is definitely an option. And then just the philanthropic donation for people who don't necessarily have a loved one who would be living in the home, but they just want to be able to donate that home to our organization. And of course, we'll work with the family to identify service providers as well to be able to support this model. So a little bit about the qualification criteria. And again, it's not necessarily just limited to this. This is just kind of some generic criteria. But your adult family member with IDD can live harmoniously with housemates, and you wish for them to live in a familiar home with care and companionship in perpetuity. You wish to help others with IDD as they share this home with your child. You will work with BAHC to ensure that your home is in good condition and free of any mortgage, lien, or any other encumbrance at the time of transfer. So we have had people reach out. That's always a big question. Does the home have to be paid off currently? It does not have to currently be paid off because, of course, we're planning for the future. In Kathy's case, for example, her and her husband are just at retirement age. We hope that they'll be with us for many years to come. So we don't expect people to have that mortgage necessarily paid off at the time of setting up this program. And then, of course, be willing to cover any upfront fees for home inspection and reserve study. So Kris kind of briefly mentioned it, but I do want to explain a little bit about that. We do, as part of this whole process and making sure that it's something that will be financially sustainable for us, we do have a third-party organization go in and do a full inspection. They're typically called property needs assessments or capital needs assessments. This is definitely something that BAHC could go in and do on our own and come up with that report ourselves, but we really felt that it was important to have a third party come in so that there was no sort of conflict of interest. And then, of course, working with BAHC to fund a reserve requirement for house sustainability. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. So these are kind of just at the high level, the program phases that the family and the individual may go through to make sure that this is going to be a good fit. So first we go through an exploratory phase. So that starts from the moment that that family is thinking that they may want to have a legacy home with BAHC. So this exploratory phase can really be any amount of time. If the family says, nope, I'm absolutely sure that this is what I want to do, that may just be a very short month of getting to know that family, but we really want to make sure that we're getting to know the family, understanding the why behind the reason that they want to do this, making sure that they have a good understanding of our organization's We would go out and visit their home just to kind of do an initial site visit, and of course extend the opportunity for them to tour some of our existing homes, just so they can kind of see the way that we run the homes and the way we maintain them. And then if we decide that it's seeming like it's going to be a good fit, then we would go ahead and move into the pre-agreement phase. So this is where we sign a letter of intent. We start drafting a house plan, and that's when we have that third-party organization come in to do that reserve study. Nothing is set in stone at any point, but especially at this point, nothing is set in stone. It's at any point in time, either one of us can say, you know what, I don't necessarily think this is going to be a good fit, and of course decide not to move forward. If we do continue to move forward, we would enter into an agreement phase where we would draft and finalize legal documents such as a property transfer agreement. This is where we would really decide which service provider and make sure that that service provider is on board, and start drafting any legal documents that we may require with them. And once everything's said and done as far as legalizing and finalizing all of those sorts of documents, the home just enters into a holding period. So this is essentially the time period where, if it's a family home, where we're waiting for those parents to pass away. If it's the case where the home is being purchased outright for this program, the holding period would essentially be non-existent, because we're just going to immediately move into the startup and ongoing operations. But in a typical scenario, again, like with Kathy Hebert, where it's dependent on her and her husband no longer being here, we would do a periodic annual review. Again, deciding if it's still going to be a good fit, evaluating if the service provider is still going to be a good fit. As individuals age, of course, the needs change. So just making sure everything is documented as far as the client's needs and their likes and their dislikes. And then once that transfer event occurs, we would go ahead and enter into escrow and any sort of legal fees that go along with that. And that would be funded by the reserves. So I know I kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier, but when we go ahead and do that third-party study with that third-party organization, as part of that reporting, we will come up with an amount of money that needs to come along with the home to not only fund the transfer event, but also the startup process, because of course, we're not going to be able to get roommates in immediately. I mean, we may have some potential people lined up, maybe some kind of wait list, but of course, we're not going to necessarily be able to get people in right away. So we want to make sure that the home can be properly funded even during that startup period. And then, of course, any large expenses that may come along with the transfer of the property, we just want to make sure those things can be covered so that we're starting off in a good position. So, you know, if the property gets transferred to us and it immediately needs a new roof, we want to make sure we're planning for those things. After the transfer event, and once the home is actually transferred to BAHC, then we would enter into that startup. That's where we start making arrangements with the service provider. We get a lease going with them. Roommates are moving in, you know, house meetings, making sure everyone's familiar with everyone, getting comfortable. We anticipate that could take up to 6 months to get the home fully up and running. And then it would just enter into ongoing operations. And we would treat it essentially like we treat any of our 53 homes now, where it's funded by reserves and rental income. So we do have an ongoing reserve that we're always supplementing to make sure that, again, down the line, any of those larger expenses can be covered. And this is just a little diagram that shows the support relationship that we really see with this program. On one side here, we have BAHC, and then on the other side, the services or the service provider, and then of course the client at the top, and then trust protector, trustee, and family kind of acting as that middle person to really make sure, again, that family's wishes are being fully executed. But the main thing I just want to highlight from here is that again, we really like to keep that housing and services separated and keep the client at the top of our priorities. It's a client-driven and person-centered plan.
Could I also say, Maddie, that you may wonder if you have, if there's a person with IDD that do not receive services from the regional center, would we work with you? And the answer is yes. the question will be that it's hard to believe in the state of California when the cost of real estate is so high. But on the other side of it also are the services, and the services are so high depending on the needs of the individual. So we certainly would talk with somebody that service-wise, that wasn't a client of the regional center, but would need to have a plan of how those services would be paid for in order to make it work and to get a symbiotic home, of a home that might be all clients that get support from the regional center in some way. Self-determination has come into this picture a lot as well. But I just wanted to say, it can be the regional center. Most of the time, I think it will be clients from the regional center, but it could, there could be some variance to that.
Yes. And then I know we are coming up a little bit on our time here, so I don't want it to seem like I'm speeding through things, but I really do want to make sure we have a chance for Lev to speak for a moment and for questions to get answered. But we've gone through extensive collaboration with this process, Cradle 2, which Lev will be speaking on in just a moment here for some reserve funding options, special needs trustees, service providers, self-determination, regional centers, and estate planners. And just I'll highlight kind of what the most important ones I think here are, as far as what sets this aside a little bit and some of our differentiators. We mentioned it a couple of times, but of course that separation of services and housing, restricted covenants. So we can't just turn around and sell the home. I know that's a big concern for a lot of folks. They're handing us a very huge asset and they're entrusting us with that. So we can't just turn around and sell that. Service provider selection, the comprehensive review study or reserve study, attention to family wishes, and a housing program plan worked on by the service provider, the family, as well as us participating in that. And then I won't get too much into this, but this is just an example of the length of the type of analysis we do as far as the money and budgeting and all of that.
And we know also that many of the individuals that are coming in are, the rent needs to be affordable. So how to make it affordable and then also to make it balance with the needs of that particular home. So our goal is certainly to make it as affordable as possible, but they're also, and this is where I think Lev is going to come in also and share with us, I think, a very unique way to create some ways that money could come into this home for even the support of the home in the reserves.
Yes, and then this just highlights a little bit about what it means to be a legacy home member and some of the expectations and some of the perks of that, but we won't get caught up in the details here right now, because again, I do want to give Lev here a chance to present a little bit about Cradle 2. So take it away.
Can I just say that Lev Mass, who is going to be taking over right now, we were looking for a very creative way to for families to think about, because people have said, I'm giving you my house and now you want money too. Well, one of the things, we never want to take a home that is going to be a home that we cannot afford to keep or to maintain. And it's not fair to us or to you or to anybody. But Lev, I think, has come up with a very creative way. And I haven't heard anybody else do this. And so, Lev, would you explain a little bit what you've come up with and why we think so much of you? You don't have to say why we do think a lot of you.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. Anyway, hello, everyone. Thank you, Parents Helping Parents. You're a lovely organization. And thank you, Kris and Maddie, for the introduction. Anyway, my name is Lev Mass. I was a former Yahoo executive, venture capitalist. And, when I heard about the Legacy Home Program many years ago, I also have a special needs brother. One of the main things that I thought about was, how do we fund the long-term viability of these homes. So first of all, I hope every family has a special needs trust. So we're an impact company. We help families set up their special needs trust and fund it. The cheapest way to fund it is with life insurance, a special type of life insurance. And under Prop 19, as Kris mentioned, if your house transfers to your child, you may get reassessed for property tax, which can be a huge burden on the special needs trust. And so one way to fund it is through a legacy home program. And what is the best way to fund a legacy home program? It's also with life insurance. So rather than putting, a lot of money away now, which might take away from your child's siblings, one way that you can fund it is invest this portion of that money into both a policy for your child's special needs trust, but also for the legacy home program. And the interesting thing about that is it's a donation, and as it's a donation, and I can share my slide, I think, just to explain it much clearer. Now let's see. But basically, let's say, you need to fund the legacy home reserve requirement is 100,000. If your employer does donation matching, and there's about 8 billion in employer matching that goes unmatched every year in this country, and 4 billion of that is for companies headquartered in California, you can use that employer donation matching to fund the reserve requirement for a legacy home. So this is just an example for a father who's 55, and for $1,750 plus the match from your employer for 10 years, which is $3,500 a year, that will fund a legacy home requirement of 100,000 when one or both parents pass away. So this is one way that we found to use those dollars at corporations that most people don't think of, that they can use to fund the legacy care for their child. And so this is one of the ways that we work to make it more affordable and more accessible, so that if anybody who's interested in a legacy home can afford it. And the only other piece that I would talk about is under AB 1033. If you have an ADU in your house, you'll have to go through a review with BAHC, but you can now separate ADUs and sell them separate from your house. And so that's another way to provide housing for your child into the future, pending that it works for BAHC. So to recap, everyone should have a special needs trust. Only 20% of families with special needs have one. And you should also, if you're considering a legacy home with BAHC, which we highly recommend, to make sure that you can fund it with a modest gift, starting around $1,000 or $1,700 a year, 10 years, plus your employer matching, can make sure that it's accessible to everyone to do a legacy home program, to create that reserve requirement to take care of all the things that Maddie talked about. So anyway, I know we're over time, but happy to answer any questions. Great to meet everyone.
Thank you. And then before we open it up to the questions, I do just want to share the last slide. This just has mine and Kris's contact information, and then a little QR code that takes you to our inquiry form on our website. So I'll leave this up for a moment for folks who might want to just take a screenshot. And then
you're going to get these slides, so you'll have it.
You will absolutely get these slides. And I think just from hearing this presentation and hearing that little snippet that Lev had to say, that we might want to have everybody come back and do a part 2 to this, because there was a lot of information. Yep. And the things that Lev was saying, I think a bunch of people are going to have a bunch of questions on, but they probably haven't even been able to formulate them yet. So we'll talk. We'll talk. But if I could just direct folks' attention to the chat, I put the link to the English evaluation and the Spanish evaluation. If you could click on that, please for simple questions. Please answer them, and I'll be monitoring how many people are answering them as we start with the questions. So a simple one first. Folks want to know, this is an amazing program. Other states have it. What about down south in LA? What about Fremont? What about Fresno? You know, lots of people want to know where else they can find these programs.
Well, let me just say that we actually first found this program in Wisconsin, and it was a program called WISH in Wisconsin. So we borrowed that. We took a lot of information from it, and we have brought it to California. There are other housing groups in part of the Lanterman housing group. And if you contact us and you're down in Southern California, and we can hook you up with a partner down there. Lev, this is new, but I am just saying that BAHC has said for the longest time we were only going to stay in the Bay Area where we were, but we would consider going further in the state of California, working with individuals in other parts of the state, again, doing the property ownership and the management, and then working with you to find a provider. So that's hot off the press of expansion.
Wow, that's very exciting news. Okay. Early on in the presentation, a couple of times, Kris, you emphasized pay for it once while describing the housing costs. Does that mean that you don't work with any kind of rental models?
Any type of what?
Rental models.
Do you want to handle that, Maddie?
Yeah, so with this model, with BAHC, and I know Kris just mentioned that maybe we'd be willing to branch out, but it's always been the case that we own the homes and do in-house property management. So I'm hopefully I'm understanding the question correctly. If you want to just hire us to be the property manager and not necessarily transfer the home, that wasn't really what the original intention of this program is. And of course, there's some benefits that do come along with transferring that home. So I hope that answers the question.
But I think the pay for it once was more the concept when we were developing the separation between the ownership of the home. In many cases, service providers used to own the home and provide the services. The biggest asset that those service providers have is that home. And when the service provider goes out of the business, they cash out on the home. And meaning the system then has to go buy another home or create another home. So that's the buy it once model, is that we're investing in permanent real estate that is staying in the system rather than it going and there's certainly some great service providers that do a great job, but the state has really thought, I like the buy it once. And that came from Mike Daniker down in Westside Regional Center concept. And we've just continued to let it grow.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. A couple of people are asking, how can I sign my adult up for this? Or, who picks and recruits who might go into said home? And I think you touched on a little, but if you could elaborate a little more, please.
Yeah. So if anyone is interested, of course, first step is just to reach out to Kris or myself.
Maddie, reach out to Maddie.
Not Kris, I guess, but myself, because again, we really do want to understand the why and make sure that everyone's on the same page as far as what's realistic and what's not. Another, I think it went away here. I'm trying to get back to the question. Oh, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. It might be answered already. I might have said done.
As far as the recruiting for matching the actual residents, so that's correct. We just do the property management. We are not well versed in making those matches. So we do have a program, and I'm not sure if he made it onto this call. Homies, it's a roommate matching program, and then of course the service provider would help with that as well, because they are typically the ones that have a little bit more expertise in that area.
But the thing to remember too is that, say back to Kathy Hubert, her son has he likes music. He likes community. He likes people to eat together. So we sort of know what he likes and sitting down with a service provider and knowing. So creating, and as Maddie said, they are the primary resident. So we want to get as much information about them when the house is transferred. We don't want to get into it's box home then, but we want to help design that home around the needs of that primary resident before it's transferred, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And then somebody else is asking about, does it have to be a single family home or can it be a condo?
We'll look at anything.
I like that answer. Okay.
I also kind of along the same lines, I saw a question, it might have gone away, but can the parents specify that all the residents are female and that the caregivers are all female? As far as the caregiving, I don't know that we necessarily have as much of a say in that. But of course, for that primary resident, if that's something that's important to them, that is something that we would honor. With Greg, actually, they want a all male home. They don't want pets. They were very specific about those two things. And they want people on similar schedules as him, quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. So definitely that is something that can be done.
And remember, we're talking about non-licensed homes.
Yeah, I think there's some
different-
confusion
There
about
would
that. Thank
be
you for
some,
clarifying.
definitely some, the homes that we have, probably 80% of them are licensed homes. So there's some pretty strict rules and regulations you need to follow. What we're talking about primarily in these homes, we would think supported living or independent living. It possibly could be a licensed home. If it's licensed home, you have to be very careful of a home that you're donating and making a promise that your child can live in it. If it's a licensed home, you have to create a program all around that it would fit, because you can't get into all of that. I've got a dog that's starting to bark at me, so I'll mute myself.
But just to confirm, so the licensed homes would be the homes that the occupants would pay with their SSI or their SSDI. There's a question about that you've probably saw, right, Maddie?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to say that we answered that live. It's 7:30, and if people come to these a lot, I try and start on time and end on time. So we have a couple of questions a little outstanding, but I would like to bring everybody on the screen back again, because I think we have a lot more to talk about with this. But just if we could end on, can you transfer the home before the parent's death if the parents want to move out and have the adult move in and have independence? And I know you touched on it, but I think that might be a nice way to end the discussion tonight.
Yes. So again, it's if you have a home, whether you're purchasing it for this specific reason or if you already own the home and you want to set this program up, and we actually had a parent, or a couple, a husband and wife, who reached out and they said, we want to travel, we want to maybe go live in a condo in Florida or wherever, we want to get out, and our son wants to be independent and live on his own. So can we do that? Can we rent a room from you guys under this model? And yes, those are all options. Again, it's just making sure everyone's on board, making sure everything's memorialized, and having really, really open conversations about what your wishes are and what's going to be best for your loved one.
And the goal is just to create more housing that meets the needs in the community. And there are families that have the resources and would like to share those resources with others.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thank you so much. And as I said, I think there are a lot more questions that will come up, especially around what Lev was talking about. If we could have a little, maybe Lev can say a little bit more next time, so that we can get a little bit more information. That would be great.
A whole session with Lev.
Just one more thing I just want to make clear, because I know it just popped up a couple times. Who actually owns the home? Once this transfer occurs, BAHC owns the home. During that holding period, we do not own the home. Only once that transfer event occurs. Again, we're a nonprofit organization who takes over home ownership and property management.
And the property taxes are definitely less with the non.
Oh, that Prop 19. And I'm not even sure everybody knows what Prop 19 is. So I think we need to explain that as well next time. Or, Google it. Google is our friend. Okay.